Are you watching closely?
Well, here we go. Fasten your utility belts and pinch yourself to check you're not dreaming. Welcome to part one of our deep dive into the career of Christopher Nolan. Yes, you heard correctly, part one of two.
Yes, that's right. I have to tell everybody listening that Christopher Nolan, if they didn't already know, is your favourite director. So this has got you incredibly excited.
I'm quite jittery, Mary. I'm not going to lie to you. Yeah, you're right. I don't think there's a better director working today. I'm sure people will disagree with me, but personally, my preference, he's just making the most interesting, out there, boundary-pushing films.
I don't think anyone can deny that. He works at such a high level of quality. There isn't a bad made film there in his entire career. I think, in a way, that has built expectations to this immense level. The expectations for, let's say, like TENET that's coming out, hopefully soon, knowing what has come out before it.
Yeah.
And you don't really get that from many directors.
Yeah, to be so consistent.
He's kind of like the Steven Spielberg of like now, you know, every time Steven Spielberg brought out a film, you know, you would get excited for it. And this is what we get now with Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, he's got a reputation, really, hasn't he, for having...
Oh, yeah.
Well, the reason his films are so good, arguably, is because of how complex they are and just how clever the construction of them all are.
And that's what's interesting, because he has complex films for mass audiences, which isn't usually the way it works.
No.
You know, your big blockbuster film is park your brain at the door and enjoy the ride. His films are just not that way at all. They're so layered and there's so many levels to them.
At the core of them, though, there's always a concept that, although it's non-physical or non-concrete, they're all things that we experience on a daily basis anyway.
Yeah.
Your time and memory and dreams and imagination, perception, morality, even gravity he did. And he turns them into these epic works. And they're accessible because we can identify with them and we can put ourselves in the place of the characters. But at the same time, each film is this metaphysical world. And as part of that, he basically takes every cinematic convention at his disposal and he inverts it all and twists it all. He truly is like a master of his craft. He gets how cinema works and he understands how the human brain pieces together information, and therefore he knows how to mislead us and trick us and surprise us and subvert everything.
It's interesting to say that he usually, for the most part, works on the scripts himself with his brother, Jonathan.
Yeah, that's true.
And their track record is just ridiculous. I mean, where did he get these ideas? They're so complex that there's layers upon layers for multiple films, not just one or two. All of his films are so built up.
They're quite philosophical thinkers, I think. One interesting thing recently, I mentioned this to you, I did a personality test. It's called the Myers-Briggs personality test. There's like 16 personalities, and it tells you what you are, basically.
Yeah.
So I did mine, and then at the bottom of the screen, it tells you like some other famous people of the same type. So I was the architect, is apparently my one, and Christopher Nolan was there, and I thought, oh, that's good.
Well, I bet you were thrilled to be in the same league with Christopher Nolan.
Some of the things that were written against this one were that they deconstruct and rebuild every idea and system that they encounter. They dislike rules and restrictions and traditions, and there's an element of perfectionism to their work as well. And not only was I going, yeah, that's me, I was thinking, yeah, that's Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, I'm going to have to do this test now.
Absolutely do this. Puts into words things that you think and you know about yourself.
Yeah.
But just articulates it in a way that you just think, I've never thought of it like that.
Yeah, well, I'll have to do it now. I will have to try that now. You're going to have to send me a link.
I'll resend it to you. I'm very interested to see what you are.
We are going to be following through both parts of this, his career consecutively.
Yes, at my insistence.
Yes, by insistence. Yes. So we are starting with Following, which is you're going to lead on for this one because I haven't seen this film. So
yes. Well, first of all, mild to heavy spoilers coming up in this episode. If you're listening on YouTube, you might want to skip ahead. If you've not seen something yet, just look in the comments. There should be some clickable links. But yeah, no, Following, I don't want to talk too much about Following because not many people have seen it, first of all. However, I think it is a fitting introduction to all of the other films that he went on to do.
People seem to not know it exists, don't they? I think a lot of people think Memento, don't they? Oh, Memento, was his first film, but it wasn't actually. But I think it's what set him on his path.
Yeah, it depends on what you consider like a proper full film release, I suppose, because this was considered a no-budget film. It was made for about $6,000 or pounds, but it was very much the project.
Yeah.
Everyone involved were working full-time jobs, so it took them a year to do. They had limited equipment, no professional lighting. Nolan did the camera work himself. He co-edited it. The locations they borrowed from everybody, and it's only about 68 minutes long, so a lot of people, I think even you included, thought it was a short film.
Yes, I did.
In terms of story, it's quite simple, really. There's an unemployed man, but he's an aspiring writer who we're told is called Bill. I'm not sure whether he actually is called Bill. He has a hobby of following people. He sort of studies them for inspiration for his characters.
That's a bit weird. He likes to follow people.
Yeah. One day, one of the people that he follows regularly confronts him and reveals that he's a burglar and invites Bill along. It turns out they're both very interested in the lives of other people. Basically, Bill becomes a bit hooked on burgling as well.
Yes.
When he realises he can find out much more from people by their possessions and heads down a slippery slope. Enters a criminal underworld, gets a bit romantically involved in one of their previous targets, a mysterious woman. That's kind of it. I won't say anything more.
That actually
story-wise.
Sounds quite good, actually. You might have sold me on it there.
It's okay. It definitely feels like a low-budget film. Just to manage your expectations. It's a very simple story, but it's the structure that adds the complexity.
Yeah.
The scenes are out of order, or you get fragments or glimpses of scenes from further on later in the story.
That is a big theme for him. He just time jump a lot.
We'll see this.
Yeah.
Yeah. The film also starts at the end and flashes back. He's talking to some unknown character at the beginning. We don't know who. And he's explaining the story. But yeah, so just to finish off already on this one, we want to talk a bit about what these, Nolanisms, we call them. What kind of things did he introduce here that we're going to see coming up? Themes is a big one. Identity, especially people living double lives. People who adopt alter egos and change their names and appearances. Truth and deception. So lots of characters who lie and manipulate, double-cross each other, or at the very least they're not what they seem. Morality and characters who have to make choices, like important choices, good or bad. And obsession, I think, is another one that comes up.
I mean, that just literally covers every film we're going to discuss today. Absolutely covers everything. Yeah.
And the core concept of this one, the relatable one, I think is people watching. I don't think anyone can say that they don't enjoy people watching. Whether or not you follow them around or not,
Yeah, I haven't started following people around yet.
No. Well, this time. Lockdown's lifting. And in terms of genres as well, noir is a massive one. You can tell that that's his main influence for so many of his films.
Yeah, definitely.
Crime, thrillers. So they sort of give way to having these morally ambiguous detective type characters, femme fatales, gritty underworlds, crime and psychological studies, things like that. Non-linear narratives you've mentioned already, interior monologues, they're all things that come as part of the style. Puzzle films that suppress or withhold information, set up questions, ask us to rely on visual cues to work out when we are and why and how and what's going on. That's pretty much it. That's it.
Really, if you think about it, pretty much every film that he's done has got levels of pretty much all of those themes there.
Yeah.
So you would think if we just lay it out like that, well, that's pretty boring, isn't it? Because you're going to be saying the same thing over and over again, just the same thing all the time, which is absolutely not the case. All of these themes appear again and again and again and again, but the stories are completely different. There's not one that is one iota the same as something that's come before, yet all with the same themes, which is incredible, really.
Yeah, it's a mark of a good director, really, that his focus on story and his focus on style are sort of equally balanced, I suppose. One doesn't work without the other. He was already working with his brother Jonathan and his wife Emma at the time. His wife actually produces all of his films, I think. She's a producer on all of them.
Yeah, she does,
Jonathan here he wasn't a writer on this one, he was just the grip.
Just start him off slow.
Yeah, we'll get there. That's pretty much all I want to cover on following, really, because like I said, it's not that big, but it does introduce a lot of those things. So I guess I'll link straight in then to the breakout film, if you will,
Yeah.
which was Memento in 2000. You have to bear with me on this one. It's not a film you can easily review. You kind of have to analyse it in order to say anything meaningful about it.
Yes. Yeah.
So this was written by Christopher Nolan, but it was based on a short story by his brother. Again, it's a very concept-driven film. This one is about memory. Story, again, not as important in what I want to talk about, but long story short, Leonard Shelby, who's played by Guy Pearce, he suffers from a form of amnesia, short-term memory loss. So he can't create new memories and he can't remember things longer than a few minutes at a time.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to track down one of the two men that were responsible for murdering his wife and causing the head injury that led to his condition. But the sort of interference, there's this so-called friend called Teddy who's sort of lingering around. There's a mysterious woman called Natalie. Lots of mysterious women. And they sort of complicate his objective. So that's the narrative. But like following, what's more important is the narration or the way that the story's told.
Yeah.
There's actually a video of Christopher Nolan explaining the structure of this film, and he's got a chalkboard and a piece of chalk, and you'd think it was a physicist explaining the laws of the universe. It's very impressive.
Yeah.
My version will probably be less so.
But only a little bit.
Yeah, but I'll see. The best and the most simplest way I can describe it is if you imagine the film as a straight line from beginning to end.
Yeah.
If you make a crease right down the centre and then fold the second half back on top of the first, that's the only way I can really describe it. If the scenes were labelled A to Z, it would read something like Z and A, Y and B, X and C, and so on. So the film intercuts between these two timelines all the way up until what would be scene M flows into scene N at the middle of the story, but at the end of the film in terms of duration. So this is the structure of Memento. Yeah, the first half of the film chronologically, so what is ABC, is presented in black and white. Leonard's just in his hotel room on the phone to an unknown caller, and these scenes we just sort of learn about his condition, his methods of remembering information. So he tattoos himself, he writes notes, he takes pictures, and he's telling the story of a client from when he worked as an insurance investigator who had the same condition that he now has and whose wife also died. And then the second half is in colour and depicts the events later in the story of him following the clues and the tip-offs that he's been collecting to hunt down the man he knows now as John G. But these scenes are obviously now in reverse, so that ZYX progression. And by doing that, you only get context to what you've already seen as future scenes appear.
Yeah, as you're going through it, yeah.
Yeah, a really loose example might be the third colour scene in the film. Leonard reads a Polaroid photograph of Teddy that says underneath, "Kill him," but then it's not until scene 5 comes along that you see Leonard writing "Kill him" on the photograph. So it builds backwards like that. There's just enough overlap that you can understand the link to what you've already seen, but you get thrown back into the unknown anyway. So like the start of each scene is a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Which is kind of backwards.
Yeah. It's a hard film, I think.
Yeah.
It doesn't follow our natural way of watching a movie. So when you come to it, you have to really rethink everything. You've got to sit and really be open-minded to it, pay attention to everything, because it's not one of those that you can, sit and multitask doing something else. You have to be completely focused, otherwise you've lost the plot. Literally.
Ironically, you have to have a good memory to follow the story.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the point, because in fragmenting the sequence of events like this, Nolan plays with the ideas of memory, time, and truth. Those are the three things that Leonard has very little grasp on. So in a way, he's replicating Leonard's condition for us, especially when you consider that we see and experience and learn everything from his perspective, including hearing his thought process in an internal monologue. He's a thoroughly unreliable narrator.
Yeah.
I guess by implication, by putting us in his head, he makes us question our own process of memory. We start doubting what we think we know and what we think we should know. And we have to do exactly the same as he does every time he wakes up. Figure out where you are by reading, and collecting the puzzle pieces from the details in the scene. Work out from the subtleties in the dialogue. Who has Leonard already met before? Who's using his nickname? Who knows about his condition already? Who predicts what he's going to say? You are the detective of his story. Ultimately, what happens is you can't trust anything or anyone. You don't know who Teddy and Natalie really are. You don't know if they want to help him. Are they taking advantage of him? Are they who they say they are? At one point, he has a Polaroid of both of them. One says, "Do not trust her," and the other one says, "Do not believe his lies." And it's like, well, what can you believe?
Yeah.
And it just comes to pass that you realise you can't trust Leonard himself.
Mm-hmm.
Nolan puts doubt in your mind about everything and
Yeah.
highlights that memory is unreliable. One of my favourite quotes was, memory can change the shape of a room, it can change the colour of a car, and memories can be distorted. They're just an interpretation, they're not a record.
That's very
that.
true. That is, I mean, think about police investigations when they're asking someone who they've seen, and colour, like you just mentioned, is such a thing. Somebody can go, "Oh, well, they were wearing a white t-shirt." Somebody else can say, "Oh, it was blue." Or you know, your memory is not exactly true. It's you can't, you literally cannot say for 100% definite anything, because it's how you remembered it. It's not necessarily true.
Case in point, I thought Andy McDowell was in that Last Christmas music video.
So, very true.
Yeah. My life's a lie. The last thing I just want to talk about is the ending. It's a very open-ended film. It leaves you with just as many questions as we had at the beginning. In a way, you'd expect, like a puzzle, the last piece would complete the image.
Yeah.
In a way, it does. It completes the story and the plot of this particular film. But we've been so preoccupied with piecing that together that Nolan has pulled the wool over your eyes about some of the glaring questions that we should have been asking all along.
Yeah.
How long has he been looking for John G? Does he even know? How many John Gs has he hunted down?
Yeah.
Even if he did find and kill him, would he remember? Does he choose not to remember? Is Leonard's wife actually dead? Who is Leonard? Come on.
Yeah.
Questions like that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's a hard film to watch, like you say, but it's a film to be experienced and not to be enjoyed. I think that's the crucial part. It's not an enjoyable film because you are him.
Well, it's so different. It's so different. You have to have seen it. It's one of those, you know, it's not your conventional. So you've got to at least say you've seen it once and experienced the film. My issue with it was the casting for me. If it had been some more maybe relatable or more likable people, and I'm talking for me personally, because I don't like Guy Pearce and I don't get anything from Carrie-Anne Moss. That really affects the movie for me. So I think maybe if it had been recast, I would possibly have enjoyed it more, because the story itself is extremely clever. I think if maybe it had a different lead, I might have enjoyed it more.
Yeah, I guess it's one of those things. It was so early still in his career that, you know, in terms of, I mean, these are well-known actors. Even Joe Pantoliano's in there, but he wasn't at the point yet where he was on like massive budgets, you know, massive budgets and big stars. But what is interesting is that in 2015 they announced. I mean, I seem to have remembered this wrong as well. Again, memory. I was pretty sure that Nolan said himself that he was going to remake Memento. It doesn't seem like now he's attached. I think it seems that another company's purchased the rights for this.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting. I don't think the film would be made better. I just don't think that will happen. But some elements, like you say, in terms of the cast, the budget, and if they do take liberties with the story and expand it, fine. I'd be interested to see what they do with it. But yeah, something like cast is something that I think the film could improve on. But it's one of those things, it makes you think, well, maybe I'm not meant to like them.
Yeah.
And maybe that's deliberate. I mean, it's a bit of a low blow for those actors, really. But so I've picked you because nobody likes you. So yeah, I guess Nolanisms here. Themes of revenge, again, obsession, truth, style-wise, playing with time, non-linear narratives, interior monologues, open endings, morally ambiguous characters. There's not a lot of crossover in terms of cast here, but I did realise after watching Batman Begins yesterday that the manager of the discount motel that he stays at is actually the police informer in Batman Begins, the guy with the beard. And his director of photography, Wally Pfister, don't laugh, it's his name. He would work on every film from Memento all the way up until The Dark Knight Rises in 2012. So yeah, I'm going to shut up now until Inception until 2 weeks time. That's a hard one to talk about. No, that's true. I'll be talking again. But yeah, that's Memento.
So
that was the year 2000.
And then we jumped to 2002 for his next film, which was Insomnia. Now, for me, this film is a complete outlier to the rest of his career, because this does not feel like a Christopher Nolan film.
Yeah,
To me,
I get
if
that.
it feels like it could be anybody's film, really. It feels like a studio movie. So obviously we don't know, but in my head I see it as he made Memento, got a lot of notice, and
Yeah.
studios wanted to work with him, but they were not yet ready to give him a movie.
Yeah, he kind of had to do something normal first,
He
didn't
had
he?
to work for them. And I think every movie after that is absolutely his. So this is
Yeah.
really the outlier, I think. So I'm going to go into this. There will be spoilers, I'm afraid. So
Spoiler
look for
klaxon.
look for the timestamps for this, because you will want to see this. So a well scripted beginning, I think, for this film. It's given you all the facts, the plot, and the character. Basically, you've got this very small Alaskan town where it is daylight all day, 24 hours a day, pretty much, because of the time of year. And you get Al Pacino and his partner, Hap, go down to Alaska to help with this murder case. A young girl's been beaten to death. And they have been sent there because internal affairs are kind of sniffing around their department, and there's some questionable things gone on, so they're kind of out of the way. And you learn straight away, because of the script, obviously he always writes a great script, and also because it's in Al Pacino's hands, and it really does the job well. You immediately know that this guy knows his stuff. He deals in details, and there's a lot more going on here than just a murder case, and that's very clear from pretty much the beginning. It's a lot more complex than that, and of course it is, because it's Christopher Nolan. It doesn't do simple.
It's another detective story again, isn't it?
It
It's
is.
the same
It is
again.
exactly, and
Even
you've
more
got
literally this time.
yes, you've got this really great mentor-mentee relationship as well in this, with Pacino and Hilary Swank, and she's this young cop and really looks up to his career. She studied it when she was training and wants to be like him, and that evolves as well as the film goes and comes full circle. And you learn very early on that there's quite bad blood between him and his partner due to a decision that he's going to make. His partner's going to cut a deal, basically, which could, will turn bad for him. And spoiler. So, chasing who they think the killer is, they're in immense fog on around these rocks, and his partner gets killed. He kills his partner.
Oh no.
And it's not as simple as cut and dry as he killed his partner. Does he kill his partner? Did he know it was him through the fog? Was it an accident? He doesn't know, and we don't know. It's not completely cut and dry, but he covers up his involvement. So did he do it? It's so there again. You've got this moral ambiguity, and that just builds through the film, this path that you're now on.
It's always really important that you don't trust your main character, isn't it?
Yeah. Al Pacino he's a fantastic actor. And the character he's playing here is, he's not necessarily doing the right things, but you're rooting for him to get onto the right path, to get the killer, to win the day. Do you know what I mean? You really are. And I should say his name's Will Dormer in this. I was watching this with very few memories of it. I didn't remember a lot about it, but the film uses light very specifically in many ways. It's one of the things that kind of you notice quite clearly. The fact that it never gets dark, how that affects the psyche of Dormer. It's a huge part of that. The fog is blurring the sight. Is it blurring truth? There's a lot of themes mixed into the way that he uses his lighting and just the way he's shot the film in general.
And as a traditionally noir story, that's interesting, because noir conventionally would play with shadows and darkness.
Yeah, exactly. And Dormer's becoming more and more acutely affected by his lack of sleep due to this light. Everything that's happened since his arrival is affecting his mental capacity to get through the case. And it's 47 minutes into the film until you actually hear from Robin Williams, who's spoiler
Suspected killer.
That complicates the plot further because he saw what Pacino did to his partner, so that gives him what he thinks is leverage against Dormer, and is going to help him in the long run.
Yeah.
I had a few laughs of like incredulity watching some of this, because you're looking at some of the things the guys do. Rob Williams was probably about, I don't know, 50 or something close, and Al Pacino was probably about 55, coming on to 60, jumping over fences, over logs. Like, there's no. I was just watching it going,
Like Hot
and I actually laughed out loud. I was like, they could not do that. So it was a little bit unrealistic in that sense. But Robin Williams is one step ahead of Al Pacino the whole time. And in this state of like lack of sleep, he isn't on top of his game, and he struggles to keep things in his favour, like, so to speak, basically. But you're never exactly sure which side Dormer's on, and that's the intriguing part about the film. Is he good or is he bad? For a long while, he's kind of flirting with the illegal, with what's clearly wrong, and at this point, you can barely see straight. The way that Nolan's done it is like you get flashes of images and acutely hearing certain words, and it's just his whole mental state is completely shot to hell, basically.
And again, he's literally putting you inside the head
of
the character that you have to be glued to, because that's the only access that he gives you.
There's a scene where you see the blood right at the start, and it's like a recurring theme all the way through it, which again, he likes his recurring themes, and that all comes clear towards the end. A good man did a bad thing, something that was absolutely against the law, to get someone who was a bad person put away like they should be, and you're left questioning, is this right or is it wrong?
Yeah, what's right and what's wrong?
And the way that he does it, he won't let Ellie, who's Hilary Swank's character, get rid of the evidence that he shot Hap. He says to her, don't lose your way, because he lost his way, and the film is the consequences of that. He doesn't come out of it with his life. He lets things spiral, and they inevitably come to a head, basically. And it leaves you with many questions.
I think the word corruption will probably come up again in this episode.
Yeah.
Not so much corrupt as in like you've...
Yeah, a different type of corrupt.
Yeah, you have been corrupted as opposed to you are corrupt.
Absolutely, yeah. I finished the film with quite a few questions. Would things have gone differently if they were under pressure from internal affairs when they arrived? If he'd gotten more sleep? If he hadn't already strayed from the moral path? In the end, I think I found more to like in this than I remember. It's a fairly slow burner, but it does have a lot more complex themes than just your average thriller first appears.
Yeah,
it's not only that, but it's all done in complete daylight. And how many thrillers do that, really? You don't get thrillers. When you think of a thriller, you think dark and edgy and noir-like in a way. In that respect, it is different. And I also like the idea of his casting as well. Al Pacino, like I said, is a great guy to root for, but he does have that edge, that darker side, And Robin Williams is like the great good guy. I mean, you just don't think of Robin Williams playing a baddie. And I think that was great casting, because it really, like the rest of the film and like the themes it uses, it kind of puts you on the fence about where you sit with both of the characters. I thought it was a lot better than I gave it credit for last time. So I would definitely look at it again.
I think things like the cast choices are made knowing that he's about to play with your expectations of the roles they've done before.
Yes.
I definitely think that's a conscious choice.
Yeah, he's great at casting. So I would definitely, if you've seen Insomnia before and just thought it was okay, I would definitely go back and relook at it again, because it is much more complex. If you start to think about the themes that are in there, it's there's a lot more to it. I would definitely look at it again.
Yeah, that's the one I don't remember really very much of at all, and I haven't watched it again yet. To be honest, all the films that I've watched so far, I've been watching in a completely different light, and I don't know whether that's just because I'm a bit older now, or whether or whether you do just get a different experience every time. And I think that's true as well.
This is why I don't think you should ever truly dismiss anything, really, because obviously age and life experience has so much effect on how you relate to things and how you see things.
Yeah.
Which is why I probably will go back to Memento, I think, and look at it again.
Oh yeah,
but I only watched
it.
I only watched it about a year or so ago, so I think I'll give it a little bit more distance first, and then kind of go back to it. But yeah, I definitely come back to Insomnia. Now we're going to go from there to what was a big film. So obviously by that point he'd obviously proved that he was, the real deal, and he was given
Such
Batman
a short
Begins.
space of time as well.
Yeah. So 2005 Batman Begins came out, and obviously the pre-production for this will have been huge, so he probably was working on the deal for that not long after Insomnia was released, and we knew this was going to be a trilogy.
Yeah, that's interesting as well.
This was not just a one movie deal,
He had sort of an opportunity here, didn't he, to use one film to set up the other two and sort of approach it his way.
Yeah, he was handed a series basically and said, right, here's your series, and this was his series. It's very much Christopher Nolan. I don't know what your take is on this, but my take on his Batman movies is they are so for the time. Tim Burton's and Joel Schumacher's, I think, less so, because they could really fit into different eras, because they're so camp or gothic or gothic-y camp, depending on which one you're looking at. I think they are less of their time, but I think Christopher Nolan's are absolutely of this time. They're so modern.
I put it very much brought it into the 21st century.
Absolutely.
One quote that I always love, he took the comic out of comic book.
Yeah, he did,
So, like you say, no more camp comedies. Bearing in mind the last time that we were in this world was Batman and Robin in 1997, which I quite like.
I do. I love the campy version. I like all of the Batmans, and I love every take of them. I like to see the different takes. But this was this was serious. This was real life.
And like I said, he uses this film as an opportunity to set it up the way he was going to do it. And I found a really good quote this morning, actually. Someone has said, he doesn't accept for one moment that he's working in a bubblegum genre, and he has to dumb it down and have to make a simplistic, effects-driven, plot-heavy, character-avoiding summer blockbuster. Instead, he really works through what this film can contribute to the Batman legend. And that's where my interest lies, in that this is an origin story, and he gives so much more reason and significance and rationale to the origin of Bruce Wayne, and by implication of Batman, by humanizing him. And I think that's something that really was lacking in the other films. But that consumes most of the first act, and a lot of it is in flashback. Like you see back to his childhood, back to his training, and we learn so much more about him.
You start off as an adult. I have to say, I have absolutely no memory of the beginning of this film in that prison camp whatsoever. No. I was like, what the hell's this? I remember this. I had absolutely no memory of it whatsoever. And then you flash back to him as a child. And I have to say, for me, that the origins of his path in this, because you always get the origin, don't you, the death of the parents and that, and because that's such a big part of who the character is. But the death of his parents in this, it's very grounded.
It's hard, doesn't it?
It's and because it's so grounded, it has more feeling than the other Batmans. I literally was like welling up when his parents died in this one. I really felt it, and I don't necessarily think that you do in the other ones. Do you know what I mean?
Well, this is the first part of, I think there's three big pieces of information that Nolan takes and develops onto. One is the parents' death. In the other films, you don't consider for a second that he's been traumatized about this or that he blames himself. But in this, he very much does, because he's the reason they left the opera house.
Well, I have to question that bloody opera house, right? What kind of great theatre backs onto an awful alley like that? I mean,
Gotham.
really? I mean,
Gotham Opera House.
It's like you come out for an opera in a tuxedo and you're in this crappy old back alley. I was like,
They could have gone out the main way.
The front door. Yeah.
Number two, fear of bats. So Bruce as a character, he is flawed. He has weaknesses. He's not a born superhero. He's a man who is lost. He's lost his way. He's haunted by lots of other things.
Yeah.
And then point three is Gotham City in itself, and the reason that Bruce Wayne chooses to take on this persona the great quote from Rachel, his sort of girlfriend in the film, what chance does Gotham have when the good people do nothing? So this guy Falcone has everybody in his back pocket.
Yeah.
Falcone's going against everything that his parents were fighting for in terms of improving the city. It just develops the character a little bit more. And this is what leads Bruce to find his path. And that there's that 7-year chunk of the film where he's traveling and training with the League of Shadows and all these things to do with confront your guilt, don't bury it with anger, overcome and embrace your fear in order to manipulate fear in others.
Yeah, the portion of that where he's training, the quote that kind of jumped out at me was, theatricality and deception are powerful agents. You must become more than just a man in the eyes of your opponent. You have to become an idea. And that is the basis of what Batman is.
Yeah, but no one's ever said it so well before.
But yeah, it's very cleverly scripted, and Nolan does that in a lot of his films. A lot of the script actually builds what the movie is. It explains what it is, without slapping you in the face with it.
Exactly.
It's very, very cleverly done.
He rejects the League of Shadows in the end because he doesn't believe that. It was a bit extreme. They were like, we're going to destroy Gotham. It's like, God, news about Gotham travels really far, doesn't it?
I know, it does, doesn't
it? But what follows is also the origin of everything that we associate now with Batman, the gadgets, the Batmobile, the Batcave, the costume, but everything is plausible.
Watching him put all that together, the suit, the car, the Batcave, there's something so thrilling about seeing the origin of it, of him, collecting all of those things together.
Yeah.
It's just fantastic. But it's a long time before you even see him as Batman. It's a full hour.
Yeah.
This amount of time, it really gives you the roots of the man.
Yeah.
Before he elevates himself to this symbol that he wants to be, you are completely rooted in the story of the man first, which you don't get with the other films.
Well, it gives Nolan so much more material to work with, doesn't it? There's less of a focus on the villains as such, I think.
Oh, yeah, in this one, definitely.
It's about him trying to work out himself as much as it is about him trying to work out what the baddie's up to and how to stop him. But yeah, for me, there's that image of him discovering what would become his Batcave underneath the house, surrounded by the bats.
Yeah.
And he stands up to his fear for the very first time.
You sent me a picture of that one, yeah. And so it's done, I'm done. I could end it here.
The film could have ended there and I still would have been happy. To me, that first hour is the Batman Begins story. What comes after that is the first of the 3 Dark Knight stories, if that makes sense, Something about this, the concept of this one, the key concept is morality, I think, and that's maybe the most complex of them all.
Yeah.
Doing good or doing bad is like the hinge of all characters. It's the crux of what makes you a character. So, especially when you're doing bad things objectively, but with good intention, it makes that complex worse.
The thing about Bruce is that he might be lost, but he is inherently good. And he knows what is right, and he'll fight for that, whatever the cost. And you see the cost through the next films. You don't really see the cost so much in this one, but you see how he is willing to fight and what he's willing to sacrifice.
Yeah, sacrifice, I was just going to say, because there's parts where in the previous films, like, Bruce is like this playboy womanizer, and that's part of his character. In this one, it's a reluctant thing.
Yeah, he's putting it on.
Otherwise, people will think, what the hell are you doing in your spare time?
What are you doing? With all the bruises he's waking up with.
It's like Nolan sat down with it and went, right, red pen. Well, that doesn't really make sense. Why would he do that? No normal person would do that, and he's given it a reason, and I love it.
No other film about Batman has taken Batman out of the film for the first hour.
Yeah.
Because it's a Batman film.
Yeah, and he's already pre-established, isn't he? He's already Batman at the start, and
but
you don't question why.
You have that hour. You have an hour to build the characters. Not only Bruce, but you have the other characters as well. I mean, one of the themes I loved in this that's repeated by Michael Caine later is, why do we fall? So we can learn to pick ourselves up.
I love it so much.
Michael Caine, Michael Caine, I love in this. He is such a great Alfred.
Did you notice that in the shot where he's first introduced, it lingers on him? It's a very knowing shot to sort of say, look who we got.
Yeah. Do you know, he brings something to the role that it adds to this really modernist Batman. I think it might be the Cockney accent.
It's possible, yeah.
You know, he brings something great to it. And Gary Oldman as well really is, I mean, he's the best Commissioner Gordon. He becomes a character because he's just a comic book character in the other movies. He's just this
he's
guy,
just a guy in the suit, isn't he?
But here, he actually becomes a person. It's brilliant casting because he is just and compassionate, and with Oldman in the role, he just brings this gravitas to it as well. So that was great to see as well.
Absolutely.
Love Morgan Freeman as Lucius Fox in this again.
Another one,
he has just this air about him, and he fits the role like a glove. He has some of the best lines in the movie,
even though it's not really a role that he's done before.
No, not really.
It's not like a set occupation of all of his previous characters or anything like that, is it?
No, definitely not.
He works it.
I love the relationship in this between Bruce and Alfred, because Alfred's always concerned with what Bruce did with his future, not with what he did or became because of his past. And that continues as a theme throughout the films, and it becomes stronger through the other movies. You always get very wise and notes of wisdom from him, and they're so extremely important to Bruce and his moral compass, keeping him on the right path, helping him get back up when he falls. Alfred is that person.
It's weird, really, because he becomes his guardian essentially, but again, none of the other films, they just ignore that period of Bruce's life. They don't touch on it.
Alfred's not just the,
he's not the butler.
I don't know, he's not the butler. He's not getting his drink at the end of a day, and he becomes so much more than that. And he's so funny. I love the line at the end where he goes, "What's the point of all those push-ups if you can't even lift a bloody log?"
Yeah,
true. It's so brilliant. They play it so well. Again, it's down to casting. You've got the bit where Gary Oldman's with him. He's like, "I'll get my car," and he's like, "I brought mine." And he crashes over the police car, and he's like, "I gotta get me one of those." There's just really you're like, yeah, it's good fun.
There are little nods to the camp comediness of the other ones, but it's used so sparingly, isn't it,
that it works.
Yeah,
it really, really works. Seeing him standing on the building for me, it's epic. It kind of fits this new, sleek, modern Batman. It's setting us up for what these films are going to be, because it's going to be big. It's dark. It's brooding, but with a stupid voice. I cannot get on board with the voice.
It doesn't seem as gravelly this time around in this one. I like it.
I've never been able to get on board with the voice. It's always irritated me. It's the one part of the movies that irritates the life out of me.
You mean you don't like the voice?
Why? I mean, I get the realistic point of it, because he's trying to
exactly
distract the fact that
none of the other films
notice him. Yes, it makes sense.
Every other film, you sort of go, well,
you would notice him because it sounds
people
like
know it's him. Yeah,
yeah, I get it. I just hate it.
Something that you touched on then about him standing on the building. I think in this film there's a lot of what I call first times. And I think first time really that location shooting was really notable, like a proper global feel. Because obviously he goes to Tibet, I think the mountain is, and all that kind of stuff happens there. And action scenes for the first time were just phenomenal. The stunt coordination. Bear in mind this is his first action film.
Yeah.
Off the charts. The other thing is the first time that a score, I think, was notable. This is Hans Zimmer who's now on board.
Yeah, he never used it quite like he did here before that.
Yeah.
It became such a huge part of the movies, and it always has since as well.
Yeah, well, this is where he stepped into that blockbuster territory. But the way he's approached it is his way.
Yeah, I really liked in this Cillian Murphy. It's only a small part of the film, but he's menacing. He's absolutely fantastic in it. I have to mention, we haven't mentioned Liam Neeson yet, even though he's in it from the beginning. He plays Ra's al Ghul, and he makes a good baddie in the theatrical sense. He can spin a good line. I mean, obviously, there's no doubt about that, because he's fantastic. But he doesn't fit the power of the role for me. He doesn't seem able to look what the part requires. He just kind of looks like a normal middle-aged man.
But the whole film, we're tricked, aren't we?
I felt like the part required more, and I am a little biased, as Liam Neeson's one of my all-time favourite good guys. So I found it very hard to get on board with that. So that's maybe one of the parts that didn't work for me. Another bit of casting, but I changed my mind completely about it. I've always thought that Rachel was miscast in both movies.
I wrote down I really liked her in this.
Yeah, but more so, I've always hated it more in the second one. But I've totally rethought that now on viewing. I wish Katie Holmes had continued with The Dark Knight as well, because I find it so jarring when a main character's recast.
It's the worst, isn't it? Yeah. It's not like Jennifer in the Back to the Future films.
Yeah, and it's,
she stayed stupid.
So I've rethought that Katie Holmes really did work for me this time. And then that ending, that he leaves a calling card and he's like, I'll look into it.
Yeah.
And I mean, leaving the cinema like that, just fantastic. It's like the biggest modern day tease, isn't it? Everybody knows the Joker.
I put, oh shit.
It's one of it's that moment, isn't it? You're like, oh my God.
Yeah. Well, we hadn't seen the Joker for 15 years since Jack Nicholson. I don't think The Dark Knight actually follows on from that little cliffhanger. I think it reorients it.
Oh, yeah.
But just having it there was enough to make everyone go, this is going places.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't think anybody was going to miss that next movie, really, were they?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And he must have, while he was working on this, he must have been working on The Prestige. That was 2006. I have to say, spoilers in this one are immense. Because the whole thing is like a deception. So, to even talk about it, we're going to be giving some things away.
Yeah.
So basically, this is 1899, something like
very
that.
Late, yeah,
1890s, and it's basically two magicians who are rivals for the best trick. Basically, being the best. The opening narration of this explains the structure of a magic trick, but it also kind of sets up the structure of the film in the way, which I thought was very clever. And again, you're seeing the end of the movie first without realising it, only without a few key details that obviously you will learn as you go on. Again, like Memento, The Prestige is the type of film you must pay complete attention to. It's so easy to miss things. There are multiple clues to the big twist in the film. And I think that's what makes it amazing to rewatch, because you will find different things each time. And again, like we said, you forget it. You forget some of his, because there's so many layers on top of his movies. You do forget things.
Yeah, it's near impossible to remember all.
Yeah, these are more rewatchable, I think, than a lot of other people's films because there's so much to them.
What I found with this one is that there was, like you said, there's so many bits that you don't remember, and there's twists that still get you every time. There's a couple, one in particular that you can't ever forget. And so that it's different watching it that way around.
Yeah.
But that doesn't take away from the fact that it did trick you the first time, and it got you the first time round. If we're talking spoilers, this is the twin aspect of the film. It's impossible not to miss the second time round. It's so in your face obvious that that's what's going on.
Yeah, but that makes it almost more interesting.
The fact that it tricked you the first time. Yeah.
What I kind of started thinking about when I was watching this was that obviously the film flits backwards and forwards through different times, which a lot of his movies do, which can be fairly confusing. And the complexity of his script can turn some people off. Yeah. Not everybody will watch The Prestige because it's quite complex and there's lots of twists to it, but you're always going to get those who are so ready for this.
Me.
I thoroughly enjoyed watching this, actually. And the themes in this were great. The death of Angier's wife, played by Hugh Jackman, and he's Angier, is what kind of changes his life. It creates the rivalry with Borden, played by Christian Bale.
Yeah, who's recurring already.
Again, yeah. And it brings out this must beat him, even like he attempts to kill him, and Nikolai Tesla is in this, and he recognises an obsession, and the actual obsession theme in this is huge. It's immense, and it's this that destroys him, because he can't understand how Borden pulls off his biggest trick. It takes over his life, and Michael Caine again is in this. He tells him that it's a double, and he won't accept it, even though the whole time it absolutely definitely is.
It is, yeah.
He can't. But there's clues in the script, or like the big reveal is the twin, and even as early as like 15 minutes into it, like you see the Chinaman, and he says he's living his whole life a certain way for the trick.
Yeah.
And the two brothers are living one life,
The
they're
same.
sharing a life.
It gives you everything you need to know.
Exactly.
But just without telling you that that's what you're meant to know.
And seeing it the second time, you see the sacrifice.
Yeah.
To sacrifice, you're only getting half of the life. And he actually says in it, we had half a full life, which was enough for us, but not for them. And that's the women in their lives. His wife not knowing the full secret, because she's not even in on it. She knows that something isn't right, and she kills herself because of it.
Every time he says he loves her, she kind of says, there's days where I know you mean it and there's days where I know you don't, which makes sense because half the time it's not his actual husband.
Today you mean it. Yeah. Not knowing which not. He didn't do it, so he doesn't know.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't him on stage. The fingers, she doesn't know how it's bleeding again. It's as bad as the day it happened. It's because it is the day it happened.
Yeah.
They had to sacrifice the other having to have the same injury to pull off the illusion of one man.
Yeah.
It says in the narration, the family life he craves one minute, he rails against the next. His mind is divided. That's because it's two minds.
Yeah.
The script describes the film in so many ways.
What's hilarious is all of those things you've just listed, that's just one of the characters.
Yeah.
Arguably two of them, because there's two of them. But that's just one half of what's going on. Hugh Jackman is off doing, in the future obviously, he's doing something completely different. And there's a whole nother side to the story that's not about magic in its traditional stage form.
What he believes is a bigger trick, he has to have that.
Which is kind of what he gets, really, because when he's travelled to, I can't remember where in America it was now.
Colorado Springs.
Colorado, that's right. And this is where he meets Nikola Tesla.
Yeah.
He's played by David Bowie, which I think was just brilliant. Where did this come from?
He just walks out through the electricity. I was like, obviously David Bowie was going to have that kind of entrance, wasn't he?
Only Christopher Nolan could get that kind of performance out of a non-actor. If you didn't know who David Bowie was or didn't recognise him as such, which to be fair, he's not 100% recognisable in this.
Well, it's no Jareth in Labyrinth, is it?
No,
this is a straight part.
That would explain why the hair was stood up, though. All that static.
Yes, it would. It definitely would.
Yeah, but this whole other element that Tesla has invented something using electricity that is real magic.
It's the modern day science for them. It was magic.
The other thing that was happening at the same time that the film doesn't necessarily allude to was that cinema was also being invented. And that was perceived as this sort of magic, like these moving pictures, like things coming out of the screen and things like that. What I love the most, actually, about The Prestige is, like you said at the very beginning, the whole film is a metaphor for how Nolan makes films.
Yeah.
He makes a pledge to us, so he sets up the trick.
Yeah.
Then he misleads us with a turn by concealing the information in order to perform a reveal, which is The Prestige.
What I liked about this film is technically the film, it's not much in scale compared to what Nolan kind of goes on to do. Nowhere near. All of this is in the script. It's and clever editing, and the deception's really, they're right in front of your face. That's what sells the film. It really is like magic. It's all these clever little deceptions.
And he challenges us, like almost from the very first shot. We're challenged. Are you watching closely?
Yeah.
It's a game. It's a game for us to play. We're invited into it. It's
got very big themes, the movie. It really does. I mean, in truth, both of these men are so obsessed with the art of magic that everything else gets in the way. They can't lead a normal life, and there are many sacrifices for their art. And you get towards the end of the film and you think that Algier might actually have won. He's beat Borden, he's outmaneuvered him with his real magic trick, and he's setting him up for murder. But really, they're both lost.
They've lost everything.
Yeah, they lost the loves, the sacrifices they were willing to make. And they say at one point, sacrifice is the price of a good trick.
Yeah.
And that's what built it. But Borden really made sacrifices, not superficial like Algiers were. He knew what he was doing, and in the end, it was about his daughter. And what really kind of I really liked about it was Michael Caine. He has one of the most interesting parts in the movie because you don't really understand him until the end. Like, he lives for magic and the methods and, and putting the tricks together, but he understands what's important. So he looks like he's against Borden for most of the movie because he's working with Algiers, but by the end, he's working with him. for the good, because it's about more than magic. It's something real. It's about the daughter and actually living a life.
Well, it's those things again, morality and identity, I
Yeah.
think, are the two that, by consequence of all this obsession, that's what is getting challenged ultimately overall. Oh, it's so good.
It's a fantastic movie.
5 stars from me. I can't argue with it.
The script is incredible. The casting is perfect. The performances are just brilliant. And Hugh Jackman in this he is fantastic. Not always known for the performance necessarily, because he's done comic book movies, X-Men, and The Greatest Showman was singing, and, but this is good. This is like really complex character going down this dark path, and he does it so well.
One of my favourite bits from him, and it's very subtle, especially when at the time you don't necessarily know, or you haven't thought it through yet, why he's acting that way, is when he's on stage with the big Tesla machine. You know he's just doing a magic trick that he can get away with, but you see it in his face that he's psyching himself up for stepping into the machine, because actually what you find out is that just dehumanizes him every night. He
believes that's his sacrifice.
Yeah, to be the best.
Really, it's not. It's not at all. He lost what was his life when he lost his wife.
Yeah,
and he lost himself. But it's fantastic. The production design in this as well is fantastic. It's such a believable setting, this 1890s London. It's
a very interesting moment in time to focus on, especially, like I say, all those new inventions coming through, and everything's just on the cusp of change and things like that. But you said it still sort of feels a bit scaled down, and I think that's why it was important for me to split his career in 2 halves, because after this is where it steps up.
This is the end of part 1, because because we've talked for so long, and B, because this is kind of the real divide.
And in true Nolan style, we're just going to end it on a cliffhanger.
We are. No recommendations this week, no news. We are literally just ending it there. So we will be starting with part 2 in a couple of weeks. We will be jumping straight into the big, bold, epic Dark Knight. And then going on a huge ride from there. So it's going to be big.
We might as well say, if you're expecting The Dark Knight, Inception, The Dark Knight Rises, Interstellar, and Dunkirk, then sorry, you clicked on the wrong one. It's next time. And it just carries on. There's some of my favourite films in that bunch.
It's going to be epic.
It's so exciting.
So we will tell you where you can find us, and that'll be it. So Matt, where can you find us?
Still need to pre-record this. Well, you can find us on our website, www.cinechat.co.uk. You can also add the /podcast to find us specifically. Social media, you can search for Cinechat Podcast, Cinechat Pod, or Cinechat_official. And you can email us at
podcast@cinechat.co.uk.
Fantastic.
So that's it.
Yeah, abrupt ending. In fact, I should just cut it off now.